Good afternoon. Welcome to the podcast, Your Voice. I am Umi Ahmed Mikidash. Today, my guest is from Canada. His name is Richard Liu. He is the Executive Director of SolarBank, a Canadian renewable energy company. Ahead of the United States of America elections at the end of this year, in November, Your Voice returns to the recent announcement of the US President Joe Biden. The US President unveiled, indeed, recently, his long-awaited vision of solar farms to help transition the U.S. electricity grid to 100% clean energy by 2035. But who will be the next president of the United States of America? We will have this information at the end of this year. Will the next president of the U.S. follow the commitment made at COP28, the 28th conference of the parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, agreed at the end of last year to transition away from fossil fuels, triple renewable energy, and double energy efficiency by 2030. Your Voice with Richard Liu is about how renewable energy projects are implemented in the U.S. It is also a conversation on how farmers and businesses are working and can work together. You are listening to Your Voice with Richard Liu. I am Umi Ahmed Mikidash.
From our perspective, renewable energy is a complement as a whole that with other technologies, solar, wind, battery storage, biomass, hydro, even including nuclear as the non-CO2 emission sources, that will be the full picture of a renewable energy to reduce the carbon dioxide levels in the world.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Your Voice on Radio Era Environnement. I am Umi Ahmed Mikidash, and today my guest is Richard Liu, Director of SolarBank. Good afternoon and good morning where you are in Canada, Richard Liu.
Well, it's so nice being here with you, Homie, and I'm very happy to be here with you. As you say that my name is Richard Liu. I'm actually the founder, president, CEO, in addition as the director for SolarBank, which is a Canadian public listed company under the symbol of SUUN. Also, we are on NASDAQ over the counter under the symbol of SUUNF.
SolarBank is a full-service renewable energy developer with development opportunities of solar projects in New York and Maryland in the US too. With more than 25 years of global energy experience developing and implementing growth strategies of organizations in North America, Europe, and Asia, you are actually someone who is in this space for so long.
Yes, I've been in Canada for 34 years. I've always been in the utility business. I was in leadership position and executive positions with Enbridge, with Toronto Hydro. And actually my first solar project was actually 20 years ago at 2003. So very happy to see the growth and the development of renewable energy business over the last 20 plus years, and happy to be a member of it.
Ahead of the United States of America's elections at the end of this year in November, US President Joe Biden actually unveiled recently his long-awaited vision of solar farms to help transition the US electricity grid to 100% clean energy by 2035. His plans indicate where farms should and should not be located in 11 states in the Western Hemispheres, including Arizona, California, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, and Utah. Tell me, you have been in this field for 25 years. You have been working on the implementation of solar energy in several continents. Could you please tell me, how do you work with your company? And how do you approach the people, public and private institutions, for instance?
Yeah, I think first to start as that renewable energy development has passed the point of no return. It's going to happen as 100% power source of the world. And I think, by the US administration, you can see that by 2030, 80% of their energy, electricity, will be coming from renewables. And today, 80% of them is actually start from fossil fuels. So we do see that the U.S. as a major marketplace for renewable energy in the coming, well, I would say 10 years, right? The administration, whether they're Republic or Democratic, they are all very supportive the cause of climate change, global warming, as you can see in the COP meetings with John Kerry and the new envoy, John, also, that they are really pushing it forward. From our perspective, renewable energy is a complement as a whole that with other technologies, solar, wind, battery storage, biomass, hydro, even including nuclear as the non-CO2 emission sources, that will be the full picture of a renewable energy to reduce the carbon dioxide levels in the world, right? From that perspective, that we actually working very closely with the local government. As you see that we've been working with Central New York Economic Development Planning Agency for many, many years, that we was taking care of a balanced approach. So for example, we don't do solar farms on prime agricultural land. We actually promoting agrovoltaics, and we're looking at sites where it's not agricultural value added practices. The land are not fertile for agricultural purposes. And then so that's where when the administration to see have guidelines talking about how to siting it, it is very actually good news for us because that gives clarity where we can site all those operations.
I see. You said you're not working with the agriculture directly. How come?
Oh, we are not taking agricultural land away from food production. We're
I see.
working, yeah, we're working with the farming communities to identify land that is not farm worthy.
I see. There is actually opponent of this project, for instance, related to the agriculture. What do you think of the critique of the plan?
I think, a lot of people feels that the agriculture are going to be very, very, I would say, pressed because of solar development. The reality is that's actually not the case, right? If you look at all the surface requirement, we do a lot of commercial and industrial rooftops. I think actually we started by putting solar panels on empty roofs, where this roof as a liability suddenly become an asset to producing renewable energies and also income for the building owners. So there are rooftops, there are carports. We actually, if you look at our announcement, I would say under the SUN, you will see we a lot of projects, right, in the closed landfill. Just if, let's say, we want to use the land, how much land will we use? There are calculations by the US authorities that you need 11,000 square miles, right, to cover it with solar panels to support the whole energy use, right? 11,000 square miles. How big is 11,000 square miles? It's a fraction of Nevada. 1/5, 1/10 of Nevada. And we all know Nevada is covered with non-agricultural land, right? So yes, there are people, there are practices in the past, putting solar panels on prime agricultural land. In Canada, for example, we have very clear guidelines when the soil type that is fertile for agriculture, type 1, 2, and 3, that's absolutely, we even wouldn't touch it. Where we go downward the levels and so on and so forth. So, and recently you can see, Omi, is that there are a lot of agrivoltaics happening. Our solar farms in upstate New York actually work very well with the sheep growers and with other agricultural activities. Bee farming, for example.
I see. Tell me, There is this quote related to the US Secretary of State for Agriculture. He says, announced investments in renewable energy and domestic fertilizer projects are expected to expand access to renewable energy infrastructure, increase domestic fertilizer production, while creating well-paying jobs and saving energy costs for people to reinvest in their businesses and communities. And it is according to the US Secretary of State for Agriculture, Tom Vilsack. What do you think? Do you think that it is possible?
We actually are looking very carefully in the market. US actually, we say it's a one market. Actually, it's not. It's more than 50 markets because energy policy is a state level policy, right? And as the government says moving forward, there are states traditionally are fossil fuel based, and they will take them longer time to manage the economics and participation by society, so on and so forth. But there are 22 plus states already already heavily into community solar, right? So that's where we actually put the solar farms, not as big as our utility size business, not as small as our rooftop business, but 5-7 megawatts near the society center, where on a non-agricultural land produce power for the neighborhood, for the community. Right, that's a democratization of power. That's allowing people actually to participate in the energy transition, in this green transition, right? But most importantly, when you talk about the domestic fertilizer, what is the fertilizer, right? The fertilizer, in addition to a lot of things, there are ammonia, for example, is a very good fertilizer for the agriculturals. And there are ways, through renewable power, through hydrogen production, then hydrogen combined with nitrogen, producing green ammonia as a feedstock for agricultural fertilizer production, right? So I think the gentleman is very right, the head of agriculture in the States, is that with renewables, it's not only, if done well, not only do not take away agricultural land, but also increases the value of our farming community.
I see. Do you think that there is a difference in treatment according to the sector of work, especially between farmers and businesses? I mean, during your career, you have had discussion with farmers about their position, but what actually you see the relation between, the project on fertilizer, for instance, and renewable energy. What is your conversation, the example of conversation you do have with the agriculture? There is this ongoing crisis of agriculture in Europe, for instance, for the US, and as you have this experience, how do you see this relation between the agriculture and businesses, for instance? Is it easy?
There are perceptions that put renewable development, whether it's wind or solar or hydro, at the opposite side of sustainable development. And agriculture is a huge component of sustainable development, right? So as I mentioned, right, everything has its place, and agriculture being with us for more than thousands of years, it has its ecosystem. It needs to be well respected. Right. So when we go to a community, we're always very careful with citing of it. We look at the zoning codes, we look at the soil classification, we look at the agricultural practices. We're also looking at the farmer's desire. As you know, sometimes the difficulty with farming communities, in addition to the commodity cost of the food, there are other reasons, labor shortages, fertilizer shortages, increased cost of equipment, and all of those that make the farming community are under stress from an economic perspective. We go into the communities, not only we save the agricultural land, we use the non-agricultural land, we also bring jobs, we bring economics activities, we bring tax incomes to the local community. For example, there are farmers that their land are actually on soil class, let's say 6 or 7 or even 12, really talking about the deserts, right? Even you growing hays, that income is limited, right? And then if we are working with the community to put a community solar farm on it, there are lease income for the particular farmer, but also there are benefits to the community, as I mentioned, not only jobs, not only tax incomes, but also allowing everyone to participate in the green transition.
Allowing everyone to participate in this green transition. Tell me, you have been in this field for so long, but how can you give me an example of a success story which you involved the communities, the businesses, your company, for instance, and the agriculture, the farmers?
Yeah. So I'll give you example. As you can see from our press announcement, that we have been working with the Fortune 100 company Honeywell for many, many years, right? In upper state New York, and they have settlement basins, which are non-agricultural land right in the middle of a farming community. Right. In the past, it's viewed as contaminated land. It's viewed as eyesore. It's viewed as non-value added, and the neighbors are certainly not happy about it. Right. And what we involved, we sit down with the Economic Development Agency. We sit down with Honeywell executives. We sit down with the townships in the nearby. So now, as you can see, we are building a 21 megawatts community solar farm. That farm will bring renewable energy to thousands of local residents, where they will not only use a renewable energy at zero carbon electricity, also at a discount to their retail price, 10%, right? So because of this, that we created the jobs, in the area, because of the value increase, now we are a tax-paying business in that, I would say, underserviced communities, right? And because of this, suddenly people say, okay, we can turn some liabilities, turn some non-favorable sites into renewables. And then the farmers, for example, that because, everything counts, right? They subscribe to be a subscriber of the renewable energy solar farm and now reducing their cost. Right. So overall, there are direct ways and there are indirect ways to help each and everyone to participate.
Tell me about the communities. Give me an example of how do you approach these communities? I mean, with different continents, you have a different perspective. You are working on the field of the US, for instance. You are in Canada, which is not far from the US. How do you see? How can you actually duplicate what you have done?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned that, there are many, many countries, 130 countries participating in COP28, and they actually have a goal to triple the renewable energies by 2030.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Let's say we have 4,000 gigawatts of renewables today. Tripling it means we need to get 11 to 12,000 gigawatts of renewables, right? So that's from a global aspect, not only just from US and Canada perspective. So, which means in the next 7 years, we need to deliver 1,000 gigawatts of renewables. Can it be done? Well, I'm happy to report in 2023, the global addition of renewables is more than 500 gigawatts, right? So it's not something that's not achievable, right? So let's say we can double the annual production in installation as SolarBank be part of it, right? That's why we public want to further extend our business under the SUNN, right? So now we actually can see we can double it and we continue with the trend for 1,000 gigawatts per year. We will achieve that tripling, and that will give us the climate goals of not increase the temperature by more than 1 degree, right? So now you see, okay, so that's great, but is the companies buying, other companies buying into it? Well, there are more than 130 companies at the meeting, and there are consensus was built, right? Yes, developed countries such as West Europe, such as the US and Canada will take the lead. But you do know there are actually other countries, in Africa, in Asia, they are actually in South America, they are actually installing more, of those ones, right? Homie, I would say, right? So suddenly there's a leap. Not only the knowledge and the technology developed in the developed countries that benefit those advanced economy, but certainly will benefit everyone and giving them a leap, from the old way of doing things right into consumption of clean, renewable, non-carbon electricity. I'm actually very excited about the technology advancement for everyone.
I see. But how do you see the challenges? These challenges, yes, COP28, it is actually the COP where actually the terms erase fossil fuels actually was mentioned. But how do you see the cost of renewable energy, which is low, and the fact that still fossil fuels is ongoing? And related to this cost of renewable energy back to the US, what do you think of the cost of these various projects and the criticism related to this cost? Whereas you found that actually renewable energy is less expensive than fossil fuels, and still fossil fuels is at the forefront. How do you see it? How do you see these challenges with this program, which is the one that people also criticize because of the cost?
I assume that electricity is everywhere on Earth, even far Antarctic, so on and so forth. There's still lights using diesel generators producing power. I would say only, using diesel power generator in Northern Ontario, in Northern Canada, and the production cost for per kilowatt hours is about 30-40 cents a kilowatt hour. And comparing to in the big cities, we pay about 15 cents a kilowatt hour, right? So it is a cost. But now when we look at the solar and the renewables, for example, and what is the parity? The reason we can offer our participants a discount to their retail price, electricity price, is because solar energy already at a parity. We can produce electricity at 10-12 cents a kilowatt hour, and we can share the wealth with the community so that everyone can participate. And in the last actually 15 years, I would say the cost of renewable energy are dropped tremendously by 80-90%. I remember my first one cost me a fortune and is only 37 kilowatts. I think the production probably $1 a kilowatt hour. Today, it's 10 cents a kilowatt an hour, right? So that's where I would say, if you compare to hydro, which you have ongoing maintenance issues, we actually have hydro dams that because of a lower water level due to climate change, it could not deliver the design capacity. We're talking about the nuclears. It takes a long time and the cycle and also remediation and waste management. So there are added costs. So the industry actually is using a term called the levelized cost of electricity as a measurement. And the literature from EPA, from all the energy authority, you will see the levelized cost of electricity from renewables are competitive or even better in certain states such as Arizona or those equator areas, better than traditional way of producing it. So cost is not an issue anymore.
Cost is not an issue anymore. You are working in the US, I mentioned in New York and Maryland, and I have a question related to these states, for instance, Arizona. How do you approach the people? How will you approach, and I want to have an example of this approach. How will you approach these states related to your activities? What will be the example that you will promote related to how you can implement your project?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Umi. Thank you for asking it. SolarBank, as a public company under the name of SUUNN, it is actually a fully vertical integrated company, right? We started from site origination. In other words, where do we deploy the investment, right? So first we look at the political policies, right? For example, in the 50 states, there are only 22 states that have a incentive and a mandate for community solar, just for example. Every state have the utility standard operating requirements and so forth. That's granted, but there are states that are a little advanced, let's say 22 of them. So we say, is the policy conducive for us to deploy renewables. The reason that those states have policies is because they understood their social economic situation much better than us from a totality perspective. So we respect that decision, whether they have incentive or mandate or not. We are a policy taker, right?
Okay.
So we go to the states, number one, and then we look at the economics. We look at the labor practices, the prevailing wage, the underdeveloped area, the labor supply, and so on and so forth. We run a financial model to say, will a solar farm deliver the return that Wall Street will ask, right? And then that's a yes. After that, we look at the overall map of the community, of the state, to say, where are the agricultural land, which should avoid? Where are the contaminated land we should focus, and anything in between, right? Technically speaking, we have a development staff in those states, looking at available sites. Okay? When we get the sites, we evaluate them. Eventually, we decide this site is good for renewable, is not taking agricultural land, is supported, and can deliver the economics as the investment requirement. Then we sit down with I would say the town's authority, and there are public meetings. Usually there are half a dozen of them. So people participate in the meetings. We listen. Some people say, we would like to have some video screens. We would like the access road to be improved. We would like. So we incorporate all of those things in our design. We are a licensed engineering consulting firm, so we have engineers on staff. So eventually we design a site plan. We present it to the town hall public meeting and get accepted, we permit it, and from there, and because we are also qualified for as a constructor, right? So we issue the construction drawings, we procure tier 1 materials, and then we hire local labor in compliance with the labor practices, etc. And we are the general contractor. We hire people to build it, and after build it, we also have an operation maintenance division to do the operation. So far, we're running about 100 plus sites.
Tell me, back to the finance. Okay, you said that the cost is not a problem. How do you approach the local government, the state, related to your project? What is the amount?
Solar farm financing is an infrastructure financing. As you can know, that there are long-term debt, there are tax incentives, and there are equity, right? So broad speaking, there are three parts, right? We from SolarBank, because we are actually being in the business for more than 10 years, and now it's a public listing under the Canadian Stock Exchange, SUE, we actually have access to the capital to afford the sponsor equity. The sponsor equity, let's say it's 20%.
What does that mean?
For example, let's say it takes $10 million to do a solar farm, right?
Yeah.
We, as the investor, as the owner and operator, we need to come up with $2 million, right? Okay. From there, and because this is a investment, because of the U.S. Have an Inflation Reduction Act, and that one actually allows people to do investment tax credit, right? So that we will work with profit companies, Fortune 100 companies, big banks, and so on and so forth, work with them to provide them with tax credit. Let's say they will give me $3 million as tax credit, right? So now it's $5 million, right? And because of the production, as you can see that we have here, right? Then we will take this one to the bank to say, you can see those are the productions over the year. You can see how much money we will be producing. Because of this, that how much money would you like to lend to us, right? It's like buy a house, right? The bank will look at this one and say, oh, okay, we're going to lend you 50% of money you need, which is $5 million, right? So now I got my $10 million, and we will just build it and provide renewable energy to the participants, and also, save the world by reducing the carbon content of our electricity grid.
I see. And how many jobs did you create with this in mind with all this investment and all the activities you've done? How many jobs? For instance, for a project, you mentioned that you're hiring people for this project. For instance, you're hiring people. How many people actually are living from your company related to what did you create?
Yeah, there are three types of jobs we create. There are, I would say, permanent jobs, such as the company that SolarBank hires. Those are developers, engineers, drafters, constructors, project managers, and so on and so forth. They are both in the US and Canada. Whatever we do work, there are people who hire, right? So that's permanent job. And there are, I would say, seasonal. And because when we do construction, for example, on the 21 megawatts solar projects with Honeywell in upper state New York, we probably have about 100 people be there for half a year, right? So because it's construction, right? So because we are doing very well in terms of the jobs that we always have sites for people, so those construction workers will actually move from project to project to project. Those people are all hired locally that so they can move, in the area, upper state New York and so on and so forth. So that's a directly job. So after the solar farm is done, there's operation maintenance. People need to making sure the electrical devices are, operating, the panels are clean, the grass are cut, the fences are nice, all of that. It's a maintenance job, right? Those are permanent, right? Right. So in addition to those direct jobs, there are indirect jobs. We buy materials, we buy, services. When you have hundreds of people working in an area, it brings opportunities to the local businesses, whether it's a food, whether it's a housing, whether it's the so on and so forth. So so even I can go beyond after the jobs because you invested tens of millions of dollars on that particular location, creates the tax base for that community.
We are nearly at the end, but I want to have your view related to this program you want to implement in the US. How do you see your company if Donald Trump is elected as a president of the US again? How do you see the deployment of solar energy?
I think a lot of people actually are worried about the political influence of renewable energy. Only I would say whether it's Democratic or Republican, they are all good people. They all want the world to be in a better places. I am not aware of a deep divide about whether we agree on climate change, global warming, or whether we agree that to use more renewable energy, so whether we agree on modernization of our power infrastructure, whether we agree on people participating in the green transition, right? So the direction will not change, the scope will not change, the scale will not change. The only change, it will be a different ways of doing it. But only we know every road leads to Rome, as they say, right? So from that perspective, I'm actually not worried, and I'm actually looking forward to a continued, investment in renewable energies, I would say till 2030, 2035. Right? And it's also past the point of no return from a point of view is not only we decarbonize the grid, we also decarbonize the transportation business by using electric cars or fuel cell cars, right? Those all at the end of the day need clean energy, which is abundant from the sun, from the wind, from the water, right? So we can actually harmoniously work and live with nature, not only for us, but also for the generations to come.
I see. Lastly, what is your message to the people, to our audience related to what you're doing?
I would say to everyone who wants to have a better place on earth to live, that SolarBank is your partner, your service provider, your enabler to achieve that goal by involving, engaging everyone to be part of the green transition.
Thank you, Richard Liu, CEO of SolarBank. Thank you very much for being my guest today.
Thank you so much, Omi. And I look forward to working with everyone and the public company SUNN. Thank you.